Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, literally taking episodes directly from there, in addition to providing information we don't provide anywhere else. Also, we're going to be introducing a Sioux Falls channel there, in addition to our College Prospects channel. So we got lots of stuff beyond just the game that day. Check it out. Link right here in the description, $2.99 per month. Check out Off the Floor. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, includes Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. Get $20 to play right away. What makes this different from the other sports books? There's no VIG, and you can find the line you want. That means you keep more of your money, and you have a better chance to win. So check it out, betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN. Get $20 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne.
Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Bucker said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about to have the guts, we're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on 5 Reasons Sports. I got Sean Rochester. You can follow him at SRochesterNBA on Twitter. Also did want to mention, for those of you who've made the migration over to Blue Sky, I'm on there now, Ethan J. Skolnick. We don't have a 5 Reasons account yet, but you can follow a lot of our content there if you'd like to. Also, make sure you subscribe to playback.tv/5RSN. That's free. And you can go on there and watch the games with us. All right, Sean is the host of Floor is Yours. I'm sorry, we got so many floor analogies here. Floor is Yours. And I do want to address that before we move forward to today's topic as we're getting ready for the Heat to play 2 games in 3 days against Indiana. You're with our friend Timothy Bain, our Bahamian correspondent, is always with me for training camp. In addition to Royal Shepherd, late of our network, who has had a certain perspective on Tyler Herro. So it was a little different than the perspective that Naveen, myself, and Greg went with. I recommend you guys check out that episode. We went 40 minutes on it. He's holding tight here, right? Now he wants Tyler to come off the bench at this point. This would be the weirdest benching in history.
I thought you were going to address the email that started off that episode, but if you haven't watched it yet, listen, you know what? Royal is good at what he does. He's going to create that buzz behind, and he's sticking to what he's always thought. He did, to be fair, acknowledge the fact that Tyler has played very well. He gave him his flowers, but I think what he's thinking is if you move him to the bench lineup, he can continue to do the same things. And I say this not necessarily that I agree with his reasoning, but I don't know how you can bench him as well as he's played. Like, you could justify that for anyone. If you're going to bench anyone that's playing well and put them in the bench unit, they could also continue to shine. But I think, we've talked a lot about the starting lineup and how it fits together and how certain people don't seem to fit and how sometimes you have too many cooks in the kitchen. And I think right now with the starting lineup, especially once Jimmy comes back, if that's later this weekend, you're going to run into that same problem again with ball being stagnant, players being stagnant, offense being stagnant, which is never a good recipe for whatever you're trying to brew up in an offensive kitchen.
No doubt. And you're going against a team this weekend, and we're going to get more into this on this episode, that will run you. They like to play with a lot of pace. The Heat don't like to play with a lot of pace. We talked about this every year. It's the same thing. They're going to push tempo. They're what they say they are. They don't. I don't know where they are right now. They were 29th, 28th, 27th. When I checked it a couple weeks ago, I don't think they've moved up a whole lot from that. They play faster without Jimmy, but they're not good in transition, so it's not like you really want them just getting out and flat out running all the time. It's been a struggle here for a few years under Spo. I'll say this. Look, at some points, I've said that Herro should come off the bench, but you cannot make a rational argument right now that the guy who's been by far the best player on the team should come off the bench. Just no. At this point, as we talked about in the last podcast, they need to adjust to him. He's playing the best. They need to adjust to him. If that means moving Terry to the bench, if that means Jimmy changing his role further, I don't know what Bam has to do. We'll probably talk about that more on this episode. But you don't take the guy who's the quarterback who's completing 72% of his passes and throwing 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. You don't tell him, okay, now we're going to start using the running game or you're going to start running the ball. No. Figure it out around the guy who's playing well, who's filled his role the way that he has to fill it. The other guys they gotta get there. And he's not even the highest paid player on the team. There are 2 paid more than he is. So I'm not with that anymore. All right, let's get to today's topic, though. We're gonna do a quick one. At the end of this episode, I also got a chance to talk to our sponsor, Javier Iglesias, who's a huge Heat fan. We want to get more fan perspective as well. And so we did that. We got a Talking Shoppe segment with him. And he agrees with you, Sean. He wants – I'm not going to give away who he wants in the starting lineup, but he wants Terry out, which is where I think a lot of Heat fans are right now. Yes, I know. You've had enough. But just wait till the end of the episode because you got to see who he wants in. Because it's not what Naveen chose. It's not what Greg chose. It's not what I chose. And I don't want you guessing because that will give it away when people sticking around to the end. But let's get into where the conference is right now. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because they're playing a Pacers team that went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, largely because of injuries to other teams. In part because they beat the Heat in a game that the Heat fell behind by like 30 in Indiana, when that was a game that could have ultimately gotten the Heat out of the play-in. And I know that even some Heat officials are still frustrated about the non-call on Herro at the end of that game. But again, you were down like 30. Like you put yourself in that position where you had no margin for error, and that's something that this team does all the time. But this year, the Pacers are 5-6. Like they're not running away with anything. And I guess, and I don't want this to come off as sunshine pumping, Sean, but I mean, really, there are 2 teams playing well in the Eastern Conference. The Cavs, who are a huge surprise at 13-0, and the Celtics, which is not any surprise that they would be 10-3 at this point. And then I guess the mild surprise is that the Magic are 7-6 and haven't gone in the tank since they lost Paolo. Franz is playing great. They've won 4 straight. But even they are only they're tied in the loss column with the Heat. They're a game and a half up on them. And you look at the rest of this conference, the Knicks 5-6. That's a huge disappointment. Towns' defense, they're finding out about it. The Bulls are 5-7. The Hawks are 5-7, which is about where you thought they'd be. Both of them, were kind of going to be the 9th and 10th teams in the conference, but instead they're 6th and 7th because the other teams haven't been good. The Nets, we thought were a tanking team. They're 5-7, slightly better than advertised. But then you have the Heat at 4-6, Pistons and Hornets 5-8, 4-7, 2 teams we thought were in the tanking category. The Bucks have won 2 straight, but are still 4-8. The Wizards we knew would be bad are 2-8, and the Sixers are 2-9. The Raptors, who I think we sort of put closer to that tanking territory too this year, but they're even worse than expected. They're 2-10, and so Sean, other than the Heat are not catching the Cavs now. They were never going to catch the Celtics, but other than that, they're a game and a half out of the 3 seed. So how do you, when you talk about where the Heat are right now, how do you put that into context?
But even talking about the Celtics, they just lost to the Hawks, I believe, without Trae Young in that game. Anyone at this point, with the exception of the Cavs, which I think next week they play Boston on Tuesday. I think Boston gets them on Tuesday. They play them about 10 days later too. So I think that's coming to an end. But look, we're not going to poo-poo on 13-0. That's amazing. And they're playing very good basketball. But you look at the teams, the Heat right now in terms of differential, they're at a -1. That's 5th best in the conference right now. Not the 5th best record, but point differential. And when you're looking at those types of things, those are sometimes the better markers to look at. Miami has been in games as much as we want to look at the losses, they've been able to compete. And so when you look at the Pacers, obviously, a similar record to Miami, 5-6 versus 4-6, they just beat Boston a few days ago too, within the last week. So anyone right now, I'm not afraid of the Orlando Magic at 7-6 without Paolo. Nobody is playing well. So if you can just sustain a good week right now, you're going to start to set yourselves up for, a nice postseason seeding. I just don't know on any given night with the Miami Heat, with the East in general, you just don't know what you're going to get. And it's frustrating, but this is going to start to separate itself. Like, it's a scientific experiment. These levels of the chemicals are going to start to separate.
Well, you would think so. And again, now you can talk about the Cavs coming back to earth, and I believe they will. But again, at this point, what are they? 7.5 games ahead of Miami. We're 13 games into the Cavs season, 10 games into the Heat season. The Heat are 7.5 behind. But the more important thing is teams like the Bucks and the Sixers, which were supposed to be ahead of the Heat, or at least most people had them. I didn't have the Bucks ahead of the Heat, by the way. I've said that repeatedly. I thought that they would have a huge fall off this year because of Lopez and Middleton specifically. But the Bucks are 8.5 behind the Cavs. The Sixers, your Sixers, right there in Philadelphia.
Wow.
Fine city. Your Sixers are 10 games behind the Cavs. Like, that's gone. Like, they're not, and this is, the Sixers were projected at like a 2 seed, a 3 seed, something along those lines. You got Embiid, who may just retire. I don't know what he's going to do at this point. Maxi's hurt. Paul George has been hurt. Like, on and off. Like, they're not healthy. We get it. But also, like, the Caleb Martin signing, I mean, it looks like the Heat dodged a bullet there, at least with the way he's playing up there. What's he shooting? Like 20% from three at this stage. He's having one of those really bad stretches, but it hasn't been followed by a good stretch at this point. I think what we have to do, though, is we got to be careful here, because I know that not many Heat fans, but some Heat officials and others, we may start to hear, well, I mean, we're not that far out. If we can figure this out, if we can make the fits work and all that kind of stuff, it's given them a cushion, with the exception, again, of the Cavs, because nobody thought the Heat were finishing ahead of the Celtics. So it's given – they've lost one team in this entire process while not playing that well. Like you mentioned, they're a negative net. They've beaten one good team, which is Minnesota. The other three are not good teams, even if their records in a couple cases are not as bad as we thought they would be. But I don't want that to be used as like okay, we can get right. We can still get the 3 or the 4 or the 5 seed. It does not mean that the team is playing well, just because you're within striking distance of a lot of other teams that aren't playing.
So I just want to make sure, Jared McCain, Rookie of the Year campaign, don't forget about that, leading the Sixers right now. So, and I can't believe you said your Sixers. Yes. But we have the Pacers twice this weekend. Then you have the Sixers coming up on Monday. That's a home game. Dallas, Milwaukee, Charlotte, 2 against the Raptors, then the Celtics. That's all before December 2nd. Those are a lot of games that you could or should, and then we know how this works with the Miami Heat. You could be conceivably the 3 seed at Thanksgiving. Like, that's not exaggerating. That's not sunshine pumping or anything.
And then you can be and then Sean, you can be the 10 seed by Christmas.
Correct.
Seriously.
So
I mean, that's how tight and pathetic this conference is right now.
That is why, though, I think to your point about if you talk to Heat officials, you can keep moving forward with this. I don't think you go out and try to secure more stuff to add to it. I don't think you sell off right away, unless it's Terry Rozier, which I know that's my opinion. But like, I just think you can go through that. We always talk about that magical number of 20 games. That early December date with Boston has to be pretty close to the 20-game mark. That's when you can start to say, all right, well, Jimmy's back. What does it look like? Terry's playing. Is he playing better? Is he playing worse? Is Tyler continuing to do this? That's where I think you can start making decisions. But I don't think you can hit the eject button this early. I also don't think that I've seen anything that convinces me that, hey, I need to go out and get whomever it is to add to this group, because we have a realistic possibility. Because even if we're the 3 seed next Thursday when we're all eating Thanksgiving dinner, do you feel confident as a 3 seed? Absolutely not. Like, give me a break. So I just, I don't buy into it.
And right now, Sean, just to be clear, they would be the 13th seed in the West. And so I think you got to take that into account here. I mean, in the West, and I feel like we've done this year after year, I think it's only 2 years since 1996. I'll have to look it up again, that the 8th seed in the West is finished with a worse record than the 8th seed in the East. I know it happened in 99. There was one other, that was the Knicks year when they went all to the finals, and that was just a lockout short season. I think there was one other year. Otherwise, this is like a cycle that has never cycled back. I mean, right now, the Wolves and the Spurs and the Clippers are 6-6, and they're tied for the 9 spot in the West. That would be the 4 spot in the Eastern Conference right now. The Warriors are 9-2. Nobody projected that. The Suns I had coming out of the West. I know you did too. They're 9-3. The Thunder's had injuries. They're 10-3. Everybody was the Nuggets they're done, they're cooked, they're whatever. They've won 5 in a row. They're 7-3. The Rockets are 8-4. They're off to a better than expected start. The Lakers 7-4. That's where some people thought they would be, but it's better than expected for me. The Grizzlies, we knew that they would rebound somewhat this year, 7-5. The Kings 7-5. The Clippers, I thought the bottom would drop out. It hasn't yet, okay, because Powell's played so well, 6-6. The Spurs more competitive this early than expected, 6-6. And even with the Wolves not playing that well, they're 6-6. And literally the team that came out of the West last year is 13th in the West right now, and that's the Mavericks at 5-7. So these are not equal playing fields right now, and it does give Miami time to sort things out. What I don't want to happen is the fact that they have time to sort things out should not lead them to believe they can sort things out, okay? Because we've seen this, and I want to go to you on this before we close because they got these 2 games against Indiana coming up. We've seen this now where it's, when everybody gets healthy, and then when everybody is healthy, it looks worse. And I'm a little, and I just, your thought on this, because we may see Jimmy back on Sunday. Okay, he's working, he was at practice, he was working on some stuff with Spo on the side, or shoot around. I've heard he's close, okay? And he started to post the social media stuff, which also indicates he's close. What is his role with Tyler coming back? Is it just go back to what it was? He wasn't scoring in first quarters anyway. He was averaging 1.7 points in the first.
I feel like it was about a week ago I made a post after watching, I don't know what game it was, but I just feel like at times they're playing very selfish basketball. And I don't say that to respond to you asking about Jimmy directly, but I think he's part of the group. Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, Jaime, and Terry Rozier. Those 5 guys are the ones that are most involved, that have the ability to be selfish. Like Haywood Highsmith isn't selfish, and nor does he have the role that he could be selfish. Duncan can't be selfish enough. Like those 5 guys I mentioned first, they have to fit in together and play team basketball. They don't have enough talent to have a good offense without playing team basketball. And I say that like Tyler's obviously playing very well. In some cases, you need him to be selfish. You need him to hunt shots. And I don't say selfishness can't necessarily just be about shooting the ball. The movement, the cutting, the screening, you don't see that from Jimmy. You don't see that from Bam like it used to be. You don't see that from Jaime at times. You need these guys playing together with the ball moving side to side, with cutters, making the defense have to play. You're going to go against a defense this weekend twice that does not engage itself in defense. So like you need to get 110, 115, 120 points against this team. But that doesn't mean that the offense is magically solved. This team is not going to defend. You're going to get opportunities to score. You're going to put up high scoring points. But the overall picture, it has not been good. It hasn't been good with Jimmy, without Jimmy. And I think when you put in the young guys, and this is another show, but like when Pella's in there, when Jovic is in there at times, when Duncan is in there, those guys are moving. And you're getting better offense, not because they're more talented, but because they're more active and it's harder to guard. So I don't think the process is bad. I just think it needs to be tinkered with. The 5 out is okay. It just has to be more efficient.
But I'll say this to close, and then we're going to get into our sponsor segment here. We're going to talk shop with Javier. Like, to me, when you talk about Duncan, like, that's why I think there needs to be more Duncan. Like, I feel like you need to provide these outlets for these guys, because I just don't think they can do it on their own. I don't think that the fits. We were talking early in the year about how the first couple games, Rozier and Herro looked really good together. They did, like they were playing off of each other. But one guy is so much more comfortable than the other now that I feel like the guy who's not comfortable is end up getting in the other guy's way. And there needs to be, I think, more separation there. Tyler played loose, got going when he had Duncan out there with him. Lean into the guy who's hot right now. That's all. And we're going to see a lot from Jimmy, because Jimmy's IQ on basketball terms is off the charts. He will understand as he's sitting there watching, like, how he kind of fits, but applying it is a different thing, particularly when you've been the guy that they've been counting on to drag them places over the past few years. And now you're saying to that guy, well, look, Boy Wonder, okay, is doing what he's doing right now. We just need you to plug in the gaps here, but you got to stay consistently aggressive in other ways, because this team feeds off of you. So it's a balance, okay? You can't totally recede. He has to be aggressive. He has to hunt mismatches, but he has to do it without gumming up the whole offense and making it slow. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's where they're at right now. That's the team they've constructed, and that's what the players need to figure out. And we haven't even talked about Bam, who I know you think is going to get off in these couple of games. He has typically. He gets up for Miles Turner. There's been a couple games that haven't been great, but I do think he will get opportunities. And if you play Prize Picks, I would use that code 5 and play Bam for the next couple of games. But again, Bam has really had one really strong game against Washington and Mexico City. He's had a couple of other decent games, and the rest have just not been to his level. All right, Sean, we appreciate it. We're going to get to our segment. Of course, we talk all the time about our friends who've sponsored the Defending the House segment with Real Estate Shop. I'm going to talk to Javier weekly for his opinions, which probably are a lot like yours. Although, again, you will be surprised with who he says should be starting. Now we get to Talking Shop.